Up next in the broadcast, officials have called for the release of a South Korean missionary who has been held captive in North Korea since October. And this just in, the Defense Ministry has confirmed that Pyongyang fired 4 projectiles into the East Sea earlier this evening. Responding to the mounting hazards of toxic dust from China, Seoul's environment minister says Beijing will cooperate to develop an advanced fine dust monitoring system. And pro-Russian gunmen seized government buildings in a border region in Ukraine, raising fears of separatism in a country still reeling from the ouster of its president. Primetime News begins now.
Good evening and welcome to Primetime News. It's Thursday, February 27th here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I'm Moon Gun-young.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thank you so much for joining us. We begin with the latest confirmation that North Korea fired 4 short-range missiles into the East Sea earlier this evening. For more details, let's go live on the phone to Arirang News correspondent Park Ji-won. Now, Ji-won, what do we know so far?
Hi there. Korea's Defense Ministry has confirmed that North Korea fired off 4 projectiles, which are believed to have been Scud-ballistic missiles at 5:42 this Thursday evening. The 4 short-range missiles were launched from North Korea's southeastern coast in an area called Gitdaeryeong into the East Sea in a northeasterly direction. Gitdaeryeong is a mountainous region with a missile launching pad and is located some 40 kilometers south of the North Korean port city of Wonsan, North Korea's strategic and military foothold. It's the first missile launch for North Korea in 9 months. Last May, North Korea fired off 3 missiles into the East Sea. South Korean Defense Ministry officials say the missiles are believed to have a range of some 200 kilometers. The ministry believes the missile launch was in response to the ongoing South Korea-U.S. joint military drills on the Korean peninsula. It added the South Korean military forces are prepared for any possible provocation from the north. Back to you in the studio.
All right, thank you, Ji-won. And now for an expert's view on the latest missile launch by North Korea, we have on the line Dr. Kim Cheol-woo, a senior research fellow at the Korea Institute for Defense Analyses.
Dr. Kim, thanks for joining us. Now, are the missiles fired today a provocation from the north? I mean, what are Pyongyang's intentions?
Well, I believe that the Pyongyang's intention is an apparent show of force to show off their improved capacity to strike the very strategic spots like Pyeongtaek and Yuhub, U.S. military base. So with the overlapping time slot, they selected this specific time zone to tell the United States, particularly if the United States, they cooperate with the North Korea Pyongyang's assertion, they can escalate tensions again and follow with more serious step if things do not go into the direction Pyongyang wants. So the other point is Pyongyang wants to get the spotlight from the international community. It is a very weird way with their own experience, with the more troublemaking, gestures, they can get back to the negotiation table. So this is a very dual-track approach, two-track approach to show off their capacity to strategic points with a 200-kilometer level missile capacity. This is a very premeditated provocation like a missile test. It's not this pure missile test for the improvement of precision.
This week, we saw North Korea literally testing the waters. A North Korean patrol ship on Tuesday violated the de facto maritime border on 3 separate occasions. Are these signs of a more serious provocation to come, as many experts predicted at the end of last year?
It depends on the Republic of Korea and Washington's response toward North Korea. Although top newsmaker from the United States make a very decisive comments against the North Korea, Park Geun-hye administration's very principled North Korean policy with a very step-by-step approach make them hard to move. So with a couple of days of provocation like gestures and NLA, South Korea responded in a very controlled way. So that's why they selected missile test firing and missile firing. So it depends on the Northern, it depends on South Korea and United States response against this new provocative missile test.
Now, the timing of the North missile launch comes as a bit of a surprise as cross-border relations seem to be warming up, especially after the rare round of family reunions that came to an end earlier this week. Now, how will this impact future inter-Korean relations, and does this launch not violate UN sanctions?
Regardless of the missile test firing, my understanding is that they are likely to offer another peace offensive, like another second round of high-level talks with the Park Geun-hye government. So with that, they can show off the improved relations, inter-Korean relations toward China and the international community. So they can argue that this short-range or 200-kilometer level missile test firing is not against the UN sanctions. So overall, their peace offensive will intensify with the more strategic way. On the other hand, they can show off their missile test. And another thing is, critical thing is the first atomic bomb test. And nuclear test is a very critical juncture to get another military escalation, military tensions here in South Korea. So with this missile tests, signifies the other zigzag style from the peace offensive and the military, like a show, apparent show of force will mixed up. So I think the Park Geun-hye government is very composed, and countermeasures is very critical to control the North Korean Kim Jong-un regime's pendulum like unexpected move.
All right, Dr. Kim Cho-do, Senior Research Fellow at the Korea Institute for Defense Analyses, thank you so much for speaking with us. Well, meanwhile, we learned earlier this Thursday that a South Korean national is being held in North Korea on charges of trying to overthrow the regime.
Now, Seoul's Unification Ministry almost immediately issued a statement calling on Pyongyang to repatriate the Christian missionary. Arirang News Unification Ministry correspondent Hwang Sung-hee reports.
Kim Jong-uk, a South Korean missionary, entered North Korea on October 7th with Bibles and other religious materials in hand. The next day, he was captured by North Korean authorities and has been held against his will ever since. At a press conference in Pyongyang on Thursday, Kim said he had wanted to build an underground church in the North Korean capital.
I advised North Koreans that I met in China to break the North Korean regime and build God's nation, and ordered them to build an underground church in the north.
North Korea claims Kim is a South Korean spy and was plotting to overthrow the state. This claim was backed up by Kim, who testified that he received money from South Korea's spy agency in exchange for providing information about the North. The National Intelligence Service denied the claims Thursday, and it's worth noting that Pyongyang has a tendency to coerce statements out of its detainees. South Korea's Unification Ministry says it was notified about the arrest in November, but that the North refused to give details on the detainee.
It was inhumane for North Korea to continue ignoring our repeated calls to identify and repatriate the detained South Korean and to only reveal his identity now.
The ministry demanded that the North ensure Kim's safety until he is repatriated and to allow his family and lawyer to visit him in Pyongyang. It's rare for a South Korean national to be detained in the North, and the incident comes amid thawing inter-Korean relations. Experts expect Kim to be released sooner rather than later, as North Korea is known to showcase its detainees before sending them back home. But considering the unpredictable nature of the communist regime, the possibility of the South Korean missionary being used as a bargaining chip cannot be ruled out. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
North Korea and Japan have agreed to hold working-level Red Cross talks in China early next month, according to Japan's foreign ministry.
In the 6 days of talks scheduled to start on March 3rd, the Japanese Red Cross and its North Korean counterpart are expected to discuss repatriation of the remains of Japanese nationals abducted by North Korea. The last Red Cross talks between the two countries were held back in 2012 in Beijing. Korea's household debt recently passed the monumental figure of 1 quadrillion won, or roughly $931 billion US, and experts say it's dragging down growth.
To tackle the problem, the government announced a series of policy measures on Thursday, and our correspondent Kim Young-gil reports.
The government announced on Thursday a set of measures for tackling the country's chronic household debt problem, with Finance Minister Hyun Oh-seok saying the government will be proactive.
To bring the ballooning amount of household debt under control, the government has set a goal of lowering the debt-to-income ratio by 5 percentage points by the end of 2017.
The debt-to-income ratio stood at 164% as of the end of 2012. The government said the debt-to-income ratio was near the mid-160% range at the end of last year. Economists view household debt as a persistent problem for the economy, as it could affect domestic demand. To address it, Korea's financial regulator urged local banks to raise the portion of fixed-rate loans.
The Financial Services Commission plans to push local banks to increase the portion of loans with fixed interest rates and encourage households to repay the principal and interest together.
The regulator hopes to raise the portion of both fixed-rate loans and principal interest repayments to 40% by the end of 2017. Financial regulators also said the growth in the amount of debt held by self-employed people or people using secondary financial institutions such as savings banks say it's a bad sign, as people in this group tend to have higher rates of defaulting on their debt. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
The nation's high court has upheld a 4-year prison term for Choi Tae-won, the head of SK Group, for embezzling company funds.
Choi was convicted of embezzling some $43 million from 2 SK Group subsidiaries to make personal investments in stock futures and options in 2008. His younger brother, Choi Jae-won, was sentenced to 3 years and 6 months behind bars for collusion. SK is the country's 3rd largest conglomerate and has more than 90 affiliates. Most of Korea has been cloaked under a thick layer of fine dust over the past week or so, and the blanket of haze has people worried about the possible health effects.
And to better monitor and forecast air quality in this country, Korea just may join hands with China. Our Shin Se-min explains.
As a mother, it's been really challenging keeping the house clean with fine dust particles everywhere. My skin also gets irritated when I go outside.
I usually enjoy outdoor activities, but nowadays I try to stay inside unless it's important. It's been a little boring.
They can feel it, breathe it, and taste it, and they're not happy. The heavy drowning smog from China that has blanketed most of Korea over the past week continued Thursday. An air pollution warning was finally lifted Thursday afternoon, 75 hours after it was imposed by the government, which makes it the longest warning ever. At its highest level, the concentration of fine dust stood at over 170 micrograms per cubic meter. That's nearly triple the amount recommended by the government as being safe. The polluted skies have forced the elderly and the young to stay inside, as the toxic particles can cause respiratory problems and chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases. One local hospital in the southern part of Seoul has reported a 20 to 30% increase in respiratory patients over the past week.
I've been coughing really bad for the past couple of days. I've even started to cough up yellow phlegm. So I now wear these masks and carry some in my bag as replacements.
To better monitor and forecast air pollution in the future, Korea has turned to China for help. Environment Minister Yoon Sung-kyu says Korea will jointly develop a new forecast model with Beijing to better prepare citizens for fine dust waves headed for Korea. Once it's up and running, the government will be able to use the data collected to improve the accuracy of its forecasts. The Korea Meteorological Administration says that the high levels of fine dust will gradually decrease as the night progresses. But it is expected to be a recurring problem as the annual yellow dust season is nearing. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye has joined the Council of Women World Leaders, a network of former and current female prime ministers and presidents.
The council said Wednesday that it's happy to have President Park as one of its 48 members. It added it hopes to promote women's leadership in conjunction with the president, noting that she has sought to eradicate violence against women and children through social policies. President Park was invited to join the council when she was inaugurated as the first female leader of Korea in February of last year. Established in 1996, the council encourages young female leaders and aims to raise issues that are important to women.
Now, earlier this week, President Park Geun-hye celebrated her first anniversary since taking office. As she enters the second year of her 5-year term, we've been devoting the week to looking at her administration's feats and some of its shortcomings.
And today, the focus is on her Cultural Enrichment Initiative. For the analysis, joining us now is Dr. Emmanuel Pastreich, Professor of Humanities College at Seoul-based Kyunghee University and Director of the Asia Institute. Well, great to have you back.
It's an honor to be here.
Now, Professor, President Park spent a lot of time focusing on cultural enrichment during her first year in office.
Right.
However, there are critics who say this cultural enrichment concept is rather vague and it lacks substance. As someone on the presidential committee of that itself, could you explain to us what cultural enrichment is and what it aims to do?
So, obviously, it's an enormous shift in Korea's policy and direction, and I think there will inevitably be a lack of concreteness at the beginning because of the profundity of the change. Essentially, Koreans have assumed for the last 60 years that technology would be the driving force for economic development, and so there's a shift here to saying that, in fact, no, it's culture that's going to be the determining factor. In terms of the specifics with the committee, we have a large group. We've talked about some basic initiatives that would be possible going forward in terms of education, in terms of outreach and supporting things like the Sejong Center overseas, and also locally and regional areas to make sure all Koreans have access to cultural activities. And then we've broken into smaller groups, mine being technology, convergence technology and humanities, and we are preparing very specific proposals, which I think have a good chance of being enacted, but we're looking at, I think, 8, 9, 10 months in the future.
So the Park administration has put this push for culture into legislation with the enactment of the Basic Law on Culture. What are some of the key aspects of this bill or law?
So the law is it's a new direction. It's an effort to say that culture is the primary asset of Korea. I think we can see it in the context of a shift that Korea is moving more towards sort of value-added, high culture market. I think as Hallyu becomes more mature. Specifically, there's aid for artists. It used to be if you wanted to get a big grant, you could only do it for like semiconductors, and now there's an attempt to move out and say technology, creativity, innovation is something which includes artists, musicians, writers, and that they should be given a higher priority in the Korean economy and Korean development going forward.
So for the average Korean, besides enjoying these new cultural opportunities, what is their obligation in the whole scheme of having more creativity encouraged in the country?
That's another excellent question. And creativity, again, is something you can't order people to do. And this is a major issue, right? Because we have government systems in general, not just Korea. People tend to say, okay, I'm going to give this much, I want to get this much. And culture just doesn't work that way. I think that the greatest potential is to create sort of open environments in which artists are respected, they get the attention and the support that they require, and also that we understand that if we want to be creative, use the technologies that we have in new imaginative ways, we have to create an environment in which creativity is valued, and that starts from kindergarten.
All right, Professor Emmanuel Patriarch, Professor of Kyung University and Director of the Asia Institute. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Some new developments out of Ukraine, where just hours ago a group of armed men reportedly seized control of the main government building on Ukraine's Crimea Peninsula.
For more details and other stories making headlines around the world, we connect live to our Yudian standing by at the news center. Leon, first tell us more about the seized government building.
Hi guys, dozens of gunmen have reportedly rushed into Crimea's government headquarters hours ago, kicking out police officers and then raising a Russian flag on the building's rooftop. We do not know yet who the group is. They have yet to make any public demands, only posting a sign that reads "Crimea is Russia." Here's one of the witnesses.
Those are 100% soldiers because police officers or anybody else wouldn't just... They are paratroopers, Russian paratroopers, or whatever they call themselves.
Now, other witnesses say they spoke Russian and appear to be military separatists. Ukrainian security forces have been put on high alert, and the local government has said it is negotiating with the armed men who remain barricaded inside. Now moving on to Thailand, where Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra has been summoned to face an anti-corruption panel. Yingluck faces charges of negligence over a disastrous rice subsidy scheme. Opponents of the Prime Minister say she turned a blind eye to warnings that the program was fostering corruption and causing huge financial losses. Prime Minister Yingluck says she was only involved in formulating the scheme, not its implementation. The National Anti-Corruption Commission summoned her on Thursday to answer questions, but she sent a lawyer to represent her instead. If found guilty, she could face impeachment. Now, in a further development, opposition leader Suthep Thaugsuban challenged Yingluck to a live televised debate after weeks of rejecting any form of dialogue. Yingluck says she's open to negotiations, but wants a protest to end first. Now, over in the United States, the nation's spotlight was on Arizona, where Governor Jan Brewer vetoed a controversial bill that would have allowed businesses to refuse service to gay and lesbian customers. Brewer, a Republican, said the law could hurt the state's economy by driving away businesses.
I have not heard of one example in Arizona where a business owner's religious liberty has been violated. The bill is broadly worded and could result in unintended and negative consequences.
Phoenix is the host city for next year's Super Bowl, and the bill raised concerns that the event, which is likely to bring in hundreds of millions of dollars to the local economy, could be moved. Now that's all for me this evening, and I'll be back tomorrow night for another look at all the stories making headlines around the world.
Hello and welcome to Primetime Sports. I'm Stephen Chen. We begin with the Olympics figure skating controversy, which erupted as Russia's Adelina Sotnikova won the gold medal over Korea's Kim Yeon-ah. It created a whirlwind of reactions that continues to swirl. Immediately, the scoring system as well as the judging came under fire, with many questioning how Sotnikova's free skate score could be so high considering her near fall. The reaction was swift, with former skaters, experts, and fans alike expressing disapproval and calling on the International Skating Union for answers. Well, they got none. the ISU has apparently refused to formally address the issue now a week later. And whether a 2 million strong Change.org petition calling for a review of the judging at Sochi prompts a response remains to be seen. And moving on, the South Korea men's national football team has unveiled the new World Cup jerseys that they'll wear in home matches. Made by Nike, the iconic bright red jersey has the Korean football emblem over the heart and also the blue stripes flanking each shoulder. And accompanied with blue shorts, it's largely a minimalist design that doesn't break from those of the past, but utilizes sophisticated fabrics meant to boost performance. And heading to the greens for the LPGA, the HSBC Women's Champions is underway, and the 2011 tournament winner, Carrie Webb, has the early lead. The 39-year-old Aussie was steady with 6 birdies and no bogeys for a 6 under 66, and the one-shot lead over American Paula Creamer after round 1. Meanwhile, Park In-bi is tied for 7th at 2 under, while defending champion Stacey Lewis sits way down the leaderboard at 3 over par. And now it's Thursday's matches in the KBL. In the first game, Mobis took down the Orions 79-54. But now let's get to the game of the night, featuring the KT Sonic Boom and the ET Land Elephants. And now with 25 wins apiece, they're fighting for sole possession of 4th place. Now it's KT with the early advantage, and they go up into the half by 5. Now ET Land mounts a comeback behind Ricardo Powell, who ends the evening with 18 points and 7 boards, and ET Land gets the win 70-63. And that's all I have for now. This has been Stephen Che. I'll see you back here later for more from the world of sports.
Finally, some good news on the weather front. The 4-day-long ultra-fine dust watch came to an end this afternoon.
But I understand that we're not out of the woods yet. So for more, let's go over to our Kim Bo-kyung. Bo-kyung, the smog has all of us concerned.
That's right, and experts are concerned as well. A Chinese expert on respiratory-related diseases voiced concerns that the heavy smog could be an even greater threat than SARS. Now, moving on to our fine dust readings. Well, as you can see, most parts of the central regions, including Seoul, are getting high levels of fine dust. And currently, cold air from the northwest, that is moving in, and it looks like the cold air would push away the fine dust tomorrow, leading to normal levels. And moving on to tomorrow's readings, Seoul, Daegu, and Busan all make it to 12 degrees. Taking a look at other regions, Dokdo and Kumgang reach 7 and -2 degrees respectively. Guys?
Thank you, Bo-kyung, for that. And that is our broadcast on this Thursday night. I'm Moon Gon-young in Seoul.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.